As the French philosopher Descartes said, God made the world, but the Dutch made Holland, and there's nowhere more uniquely beautifully Dutch than Amsterdam, this wonderful city that seems almost to float on the water. But for the last 10 years, this has also been a city with a gaping cultural hole where its heart should be. This is the Rijksmuseum, one of the world's great museums, Holland's equivalent to the National Gallery or the Louvre. And yet, for the last 10 years, it's been closed to the public, undergoing a massive restoration.
The closure of the Rijksmuseum was a big hole in the national life. We missed all these beautiful things.
Can you imagine the French rolling the Mona Lisa through the streets? Only in Holland would this happen.
I consider the Rijksmuseum the nucleus, or more or less the egg we crawled out.
There are very few countries where the National Museum has been entirely rethought, reinvented.
It really is amazing. Everybody's very excited in having it open again. The national treasures of the Dutch people are inside this museum.
Wow, it's just unbelievable. For over a decade, people all over the museum world, but above all, the Dutch people have been waiting, but now the wait is over. So join me on a journey to rediscover the treasures of a great nation. So, welcome to the Rijksmuseum 2013. This is the scene of probably the most remarkable, the most expensive, the most ambitious remodelling of one of the world's major museums ever undertaken. The whole place is buzzing with crowds, with journalists, with TV crews, but actually, compared to what it's been like in the last few weeks, it's relatively calm. It's been a hive of activity here. They've been frantically putting the last touches to their great museum, and we have had a backstage pass. Over the last few weeks, we've been privileged enough to watch how the Dutch have reinvented their single greatest monument to their past. It's all happening. Paintings are arriving in crates, they're coming out of their boxes, they're going up on the walls. The whole place is buzzing with machinery. Which painting is this?
Love letters.
That's Vermeer's love letter.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. So there's a Vermeer under there.
Yes.
And you're not shaking.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Take a painting and I put it on the wall.
You're going to do
Okay.
that now?
Yeah. Second.
Thank you. That is, this is one of the great paintings in the world. The gentleman behind the cameraman, he doesn't want to be on TV. He doesn't like being on TV, but he has agreed to be on TV to hang the picture. So we really appreciate that.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I can't believe it. It looks like it was painted yesterday. Isn't it fantastic?
The glass is clean.
The glass is clean. What a beautiful painting. Now, the Rijksmuseum's collections are jaw-droppingly rich and varied. There are treasures from Asia and the Far East. There are masterpieces of painting like this, Monet, or over here, a wonderfully piercing self-portrait by none other than Vincent van Gogh. But this is also a museum with a single overriding mission: to tell the story of the Dutch past, to bring Holland to life. Now, in the past, the Rijksmuseum organised its collections on rather traditional academic lines, department by department, you know, the sort of thing. Over here we've got glass, over there we've got silver. Gallery 3 is for ceramics, galleries 22 to 9 for painting. But they've done away with all of that now, and in a very bold, daring and highly effective way, what they've done is they've brought all of the arts together and involved them in this great chronological sweep through history. And it's quite some achievement. 80 galleries, 8,000 objects, and 800 years of history. So you really do need more than an hour or two to get to know this place.
The Rijksmuseum is about the Dutchness of Dutchness. It was constructed in the 19th century as a symbol for the Dutch nation, and it houses the treasures of the Netherlands.
I think anyone coming to Amsterdam for the first time and looking at the Rijksmuseum can't fail to be struck by how unique it is, how extraordinary it is. There is no other building in the city like it. It's this wonderful neo-Gothic, romantic fantasy temple to art. And nowadays it's one of the most popular, most loved buildings in all of Holland, but it was not always so. When it was first unveiled in 1885, it was regarded with horror. How Catholic! With its stained glass windows, its resemblance to a cathedral, the flamboyance of its colour and its architecture. Many people saw it as a kind of a fishbone lodged in the throat of the Dutch state, which was inherently a Protestant state. How dare Cyprus, the architect, a Catholic, have erected this building in the heart of Amsterdam? And the king of the time, William III, refused to set foot in the building. My favourite detail on the whole building is that statue. Do you see up there in the corner? That is Cyprus himself, the architect, with his beard, looking rather furtively round the corner of the building, as if, almost as if to say, "Ooh, I'm a Catholic, I'm in a Protestant world, have I got away with it?"
When we moved into this building in the 19th century, the collection only had 700 paintings. Now we have 6,000. So the collection has grown a lot. This meant that in the 20th century, the decorations, original decorations of the building, were obscured. So the building slowly disappeared. And I think that what the renovation did is that it gave the building back its words, and the building speaks again. And now it's in harmony with the objects.
Now, I remember coming to the Rijksmuseum 20 years ago, and believe me, the transformation is truly mind-boggling. Look at this great central courtyard full of light, space, a sense of air. Where I'm standing used to be underwater. Now, when they decided to modernise and renovate this vast building, there were to be no half measures. Large parts of it were completely gutted. In the beginning, the process was supposed to take 3 years, long enough, you might think. In the end, it's taken them 10 years to complete, which gives you some idea of the many obstacles they had to overcome. The sympathetic new design is as elegantly minimal as Cyprus' original was extravagant, and the delicate task of resurrecting the museum was undertaken by Spanish architects, Cruz Ortiz. Being asked to design the new Rijksmuseum, it's not quite like being asked to walk on water, but you've certainly been asked to build on water. Last time I was here, there was a canal down there.
Yeah.
What have you done with it?
It was the sea. Actually, it was not a canal. Yeah, when you dig more than 1.5 meters in Amsterdam, you are under the level of the sea. So actually, you have all the water pouring up.
And now this building has risen,
Yes.
almost sort of from the ashes of its former self.
Yeah.
It strikes me that you've been very sensitive to the original architecture.
This building, it's a perfect example of the interest of the architecture at the end of the 19th century. When doing this kind of task, you pay tribute, let's say that way, to the system building.
Now, the whole project was scheduled for completion in 2008. So what caused this immense delay? Was it some astonishing aquatic engineering problem, some logistical issue? No, it was a uniquely Dutch issue.
I think the biggest problem was the bicycle tunnel.
You're kidding me.
Heard of it?
The bicycle tunnel was
Yes.
put me in the
Well,
picture.
when they decided to renovate this museum, they also wanted to modernize it. And they created a new space in the middle of the museum. So they closed down the bicycle tunnel. And that would have been the central entrance.
Now, this central passageway, it's known as the city's gateway, runs right through the centre of the Rijksmuseum, connecting the outskirts of the city to the centre. And before the renovations began, it was used by more than 13,000 cyclists a day. So when the architects responsible for the revamping suggested it be transformed, split into two levels, there was mass revolt. Holland's cycling lobby, hugely powerful here, fell over their handlebars in disgust. They staged demonstrations, sit-ins. They forced a major re-evaluation of the whole architectural transformation of the museum.
When Cuypers built the Rijksmuseum in the 1880s, it was at the border of the city. And he built it over one of the important entrance roads, and he built it like a city gate, and it was meant to go under it. So from an architectural point of view, from an urban point of view, I think that we should stick to it.
I always agree that the bicycle could ride through, but I wanted the bicycle to ride in both laterals of the passage. The passage are 3 bays.
Ah, okay.
We wanted the bicycle to ride in the 2 laterals, but the bicycle wanted to ride in the center, where the power is.
That's great.
In the end, the architect had to redesign the whole plan, and that caused a major delay and a major extra money.
The protests over the bike passage added years to the project, and the passions raised show the peculiar nature of the Dutch attitude to this museum. It's theirs, their national space. What does the Rijksmuseum mean to the people of Amsterdam, to the people of Holland? What does it mean to you?
The treasures of the country are held here. This is the main museum, it's the mother of all museums. And
I like that. So this is the mother,
Yeah.
the mother of the Netherlands.
yeah.
We should consider it as our own national identity and the basis where we come from. If we consider this a museum for foreign people or for once every 10 years to visit, we will lose our identity, definitely. We're facing times where we look for our identity. Well, it's here, and it was locked. We lost our concept of what it is to be Dutch, where our cultural identity derives from. We lost it all, and we have to be proud of our Dutch culture. If we understand where we came from, if we go to the Rijksmuseum, look thoroughly, what was our basis? Where did Vermeer come from? Rembrandt, etc., Mondrian. Especially now, we needed our art.
I think it's just fantastic. But what do you think?
It really is amazing. It's hung very beautiful with the colors on the wall, on the places where they renovated the original details. It's been very, well, amazing. The starry sky, did you see the starry sky from
Yes.
It's dazzling.
All the way from Glasgow.
Yeah.
That's our contribution. Another way in which they've married the old with the new here at the Rijksmuseum is by intruding into some of the spaces commissioned by living artists. In this case, a work by the Glasgow-based Turner Prize-winning Richard Wright, who's taken a motif from de Cuyper's original design for the library, a star, and turned it into this bedazzling op art creation, best experience lying in your back. I think you're allowed to lie on your back in here. Now, it's not just the museum that's been receiving a makeover. Some of the world's most famous paintings have been getting some pretty special treatment too. When the galleries of the Rijksmuseum are finally open to the public, the whole place will be seething. But while they've been closed, they've taken the opportunity to do some truly innovative research into some of their most precious pictures. I feel like a child who's been sort of allowed free run in a toy shop. That's just amazing to see a naked Rembrandt. And you're actually looking, you're not even looking at the skin, you're looking beneath the skin of the Rembrandt, right? When I ambushed them, they were in the middle of X-raying Rembrandt's 1662 portrait of the Drapers Guild. And their examination reveals, fascinatingly, how he struggled with the composition, especially when it came to placing the servant. Basically, this gentleman there, the only one without the hat, what you're saying is that Rembrandt was thinking, where am I going to put him?
Right.
And where did he start off, do you think?
Well, we think he might have started out on the right because it's actually almost a finished head, right? And he ended up here, and we can see if we look at the head of the man in the center that the head is actually a lot taller than it is today. So we probably moved him here and then said, let's top off the head, make it a bit smaller, and put them there. Yeah.
Sometimes X-rays of paintings are really boring because they just show you the painting that's underneath in sketch form.
Yeah.
But this is a really top X-ray. But Tim, what's going on over here?
Over here we have a 3D scanner. What we're doing is we're scanning this entire painting. This is the Jewish Bride by Rembrandt.
I know.
And we're scanning it with a resolution of 10 micrometers. This is a 3D scanner. We have 2 cameras in a stereo setup, and it triangulates each point on the surface of the painting. And we can get a lot of points from this painting, and from that we can create a 3-dimensional map of the painting, of the depth. So in this painting he painted with not only thick brush strokes, but also probably put just pieces of dry paint on it.
With his hands.
Correct. And if we scale up the Z resolution, so the depth resolution a bit, we can make renders that look like this. This has been exaggerated 50 times, and you could see the plasters of paint all over here. You can see a squiggle here.
Oh, that's amazing.
You can see drabs of paint going over it.
It's like Arizona.
Yeah.
It's like the painted desert.
What?
It's like...
Or maybe like Mars. This is the most amazing thing. This really says something about the health of the painting, right? 3 global cracks running along the painting, a lot of small cracks in between.
Could you do me a big favour? Because, as it happens, like Van Gogh, who was obsessed by this painting, used to stand in front of it for hours at a time and said it's the most infinitely sympathetic picture. He was obsessed by that yellow, buttery sleeve.
Yeah.
He was completely hypnotized by it, and when you look at a Van Gogh sunflower, I think he's...
If you want to look at a Van Gogh sunflower, I have one here as well. Actually, yeah.
Who's this guy? I'm going to take you back to Holland with me.
Here it comes.
That's a Van Gogh sunflower.
That's a Van Gogh sunflower. You can really see it's young.
Look at that.
You can really see
Stop it there,
drabs of paint.
Look at that. That is amazing. I mean, what I love about the way that Van Gogh did the sunflowers is that he uses paint not just as a representational medium, but as
It's almost a sculpture.
Yeah.
No, but really.
Give me 5.
There we
I
go.
agree, absolutely.
You can see he pointed his brush in there. You can see the hairs running along. It's a bit different.
Every painting through Tim's new lens becomes like a planet. But take me back to the Jewish Bride.
Right.
To me, that's like you've got a helicopter and you're flying over the painting, and the painting turns into a landscape. That's just fantastic. And what an anarchist Rembrandt was.
Yeah.
I mean, what's he put the paint on there with? He could have painted that with his nose. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Wow. That's one of the best things I've seen. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
At your service.
Great. No, wow. So if you want to see the main draw, the star attraction, look, over here, is the Night Watch, Holland's most iconic painting. It's not just the most important painting in Holland. This is a true national treasure, wonderfully raucous expression of the Dutch national character. Here they are, the burger class, in all their drunken splendor. But look at the size of this picture. It's 16 foot by 12. Getting it into place was almost as big a job as finishing the reconstruction of the museum. Completed in 1642, the Night Watch is Rembrandt's most famous work, far too popular to keep away from public view. So while the main building was being restored, it was always on display in a smaller wing of the museum. And when it was time for it to move back home, it caused quite a stir. I think it's wonderful. The Night Watch on a crane, 30 foot above the ground. Everybody here going like, don't drop it! I do think this is more than slightly surreal. The painting is hugely symbolic for the people of Holland in all sorts of ways. Most famous artist, Rembrandt. It's an image of supposedly civic solidarity. So it stands for the nation in a way. It's coming through a triumphal arch. It's a nice touch. Ah, it's terribly close to the top of that arch. It's like a football match. They're cheering the painting. There are kids over there. There's thousands of people here. Woo! What a fantastic way to mark the opening of the Rijksmuseum. Can you imagine the French? Can you imagine the French rolling the Mona Lisa through the streets? Only in Holland would this happen. I think it's superb.
We're Dutch. I mean, this national treasure belongs really to everybody. And yeah, it took just a very short distance to bring it from the other building to this building. And yes, we have a crate. And yes, it's on the street. And yes, the sun was shining and everybody was there.
It's fantastic.
So we made it a kind of ceremony, a procession almost.
I think the fascinating thing about the Night Watch is that in France, the Louvre, its icon is the Mona Lisa, an Italian painting. But for the Rijksmuseum, what makes the Rijksmuseum so special is that it has this national character. It's very much interwoven with the Night Watch, with the Dutch identity. And complex as that identity is, people kind of still feel this is our national icon, and that's also why there's so much excitement when it's being moved.
The picture's so big, so fragile, so precious that they actually cut a slot into the 19th century brickwork to allow it to be lifted safely home.
At the high altar of this cathedral of art that Kuipers had constructed, there's the Night Watch. But what does the Night Watch show? The most important painting of the Netherlands is not a king, it's not a queen, it's not Christ on the cross, no, it's burghers. And they are pharmacists, merchants, and lawyers.
Talk about pride of place. Pride of place. Everything in the museum has been moved around, changed around. Every single work of art is not to be found where it once was, except for this one, the Night Watch. Now, one of the things that's totally unique about the Rijksmuseum, as a national museum of art, it's the only one in the world that was constructed entirely around one picture, this picture. The room itself proclaims Rembrandt's genius, tells the story in its inscription of his life. And at the centre is this picture, which I suppose, to a Dutchman, it's almost a talisman, it's a touchstone, it's a symbol of national identity. So a wonderful artist, Rembrandt. He is the Shakespeare of painting. Like Shakespeare, he breaks all the rules, and what bubbles through the surface of his canvases is just this profound, unruly, raucous sense of humanity. He is the painter of human beings, as Shakespeare is the writer of human beings. That's what you get. What is it that makes a painting live forever in people's heart and soul? I think one of the most important things is mystery. It's mystery. If you understand it, it's kind of dead. And this picture is intensely mysterious. It was the word Van Gogh used about Rembrandt. He is mysterious, so mysterious that he seems to use paint to say things for which we have no words. And at the heart of the painting, for me it's the heart, there is this really enigmatic detail. A little girl lit by that shaft of Rembrandt light. But she has the face of his wife, Saskia, who died in the same year that this picture was delivered. Was this the last time he painted Saskia from the life? But if so, why did he attach her face to the body of a little girl? What's going on? We don't know. I suspect that this is some kind of Rembrandtian tribute to her memory, but in the absence of the man himself, we'll never know what it really means. When you think about the Rijksmuseum, I mean, it's a museum not just of Dutch art, but also of Dutch history, is it not? And is it important to you that, you know, the people of Holland can come here and, in effect, walk through their own past?
Yeah, history and art go hand in hand, and that's exactly what we want. We have this sense of time and sense of beauty, and we have, if you walk through the galleries, with on every floor a century of Dutch art, culture, history, from the Middle Ages to Mondrian. So you walk into a gallery and you see a ship model or a gun, and next to that a beautiful painting.
Very much in Holland now.
So here you're blown away by this gigantic...
You're blown away, yeah. It's rather a sort of forbidding opening to a gallery.
This is really the time of the Dutch fighting the Spanish, and one of the...
How many items are there in the whole collection of the
Well,
Rijksmuseum?
there are over 1 million objects. So for us it was incredibly difficult to choose exactly the objects that would tell the story of Dutch art and history. And it was a lengthy process.
I think this is the ugliest painting in the whole of the Rijksmuseum. For me, it's just...
I think it's more than ugly, it's horrific. I mean, it's one of those...
Out of the 1 million things that are owned by the museum, how many are able to be displayed at one time here?
8,000 we chose. And it had a motto where we said less is more. So we really chose objects that we think show the culture, are beautiful works of art, and give you a sense of time and a sense of beauty.
They are masterpieces, aren't they?
This also is fantastic, eh?
Is this going to be covered with glass or not?
No.
No, because that's one of the things I've noticed. There's a lot of the paintings you've kept naked, I call it. You know, they're not got glass on.
Yeah, we feel that you have to be able to appreciate them in that way. And also here you have to be able to stand face in face with the works of art.
And what has been the great driving purpose behind this massive reconstruction? Well, fundamentally, to turn the museum itself into a blank canvas upon which the curators can hang the works in such a way that they tell the story of the Dutch and of Holland. And what a story it is. Over the centuries, the Dutch state has taken many forms. A relatively small area, it emerged from the Middle Ages with disproportionate power and influence, thanks to a native talent for trade. The famously flat land of the Low Countries has never produced enough agriculture to support itself, so commerce has always been essential. The principles of free trade and the tolerance that made that possible have always been at the heart of the Dutch national psyche. Holland's origins as an independent state lie in a violently colonial relationship with the great villains of Dutch history, the Spanish.
There were anti-Spanish songs that were published and people would sing them, and there were books all about the horrible crimes of the Spanish and how the Dutch suffered under the Spanish, particularly in the first half of the 17th century.
Maybe it was almost like that anti-Spanish feeling was almost like a kind of glue needed to cement together this new nation.
Yes, the idea nowadays that you cement a nation, you make a nation by setting up an other, a strong other, and for the Dutch, the Spanish were the other.
The roots of the conflict reach back to 1555, when control of mainly Protestant Holland passed to the fanatically Catholic Spaniard Philip II. With a hateful mistrust of his subjects, he set out to suppress them. So how did the Dutch react to Philip's repressive policies? Well, they attacked what he loved most, the very fabric of the Catholic Church. They attacked its superstitions, they attacked its priests, they attacked the buildings that represented Philip and his faith. They pulled down statues, they smashed stained glass windows, they destroyed paintings. You can see it all here, laid out in vivid detail, the iconoclastic rage, it was called. Now, this violent upsurge of popular unrest expressed against Philip, against Spain, against Catholicism, it would lead to the Great War of Dutch independence, a war so bloody and so protracted that its very name conveys the pain of it all, the 80 Years' War. Iconoclasm, the destruction of art, the desecration of a sacred space. Well, you might think that all that is safely in Holland's Reformation past, but have a look at this. This is the Great Hall. Isn't it fantastic? I think anybody coming to the magnificently revamped Rijksmuseum will instantly understand that this represents the beating heart of the institution. It represents everything that it was founded to say to the world about Holland. What we have are scenes of Dutch history, emblems of the proud spirit of Dutch independence. It's got that kind of wonderful 19th century sentimental illogicality that you find in the V&A and buildings like that in Britain. But it's what a wonderfully exuberant expression of the idea that art is our temple. But believe it or not, the history of Dutch iconoclasm, the history of the war between the Protestant and the Catholic, was played out in this very space in the 1950s, when an officious public director of works decided that this great space was giving people the wrong idea about Holland. Holland was As far as he was concerned, Holland was Protestant. It was logical, it was clinical, it was sensible, it wasn't artistic, it wasn't Catholic. So what did he do? Can you believe it? He had the whole space whitewashed. Whitewashed.
In the 1950s, 60s, the Dutch became less and less religious. You had, in literature, you have books writing about terrible religious parents who made you pray before every meal. And that was the time that they wanted to get rid of this religious Catholic building. And also modernism helped them with it because you could paint everything white.
There was a twisted historical logic behind this architectural desecration. Whitewashing the Great Hall was a modern tribute to the sparse Dutch Protestant churches of the Reformation. Restoring it to its former glory took painstaking effort. But the most extraordinary aspect of an already pretty extraordinary story is the fact that this guy actually asked the principal conservator of paintings, a wonderful lady called Manja, who sadly is too ill to be in this show. He ordered her to destroy the paintings. Can you believe that? Telling the conservator of the Rijksmuseum to destroy paintings, to burn them. But she didn't. She hid them. And now, thanks to the enlightened attitude of the modern renovators of the Rijksmuseum, they're back in place. It's a pretty amazing story. Now, if you look through the 800 years spanned by the Rijksmuseum's collection, there's one period in particular which I think would set anyone's imagination on fire. The Dutch 17th century. They call it the Golden Age, and with good reason, because it was then, extraordinarily, that this tiny seafaring nation became the great powerhouse of world politics, world trade, world finance. Quite simply, the most powerful country in the world, and also the most creative in terms of painting. At the time, Holland was a political anomaly. Despite having a population of less than 2 million, it had confidently renounced Spanish and papal rule and functioned as a republic. Without the straitjacket of the established order, still in place throughout most of Europe, Dutch trade boomed. Holland flourished. So who ruled this new society, this new nation, Holland? Well, it wasn't any king or prince, it wasn't the Pope or any priest. It was men like these, prosperous members of a rising merchant middle class, the burgher citizens of Amsterdam.
We have this extraordinary case of a country that is very small, and they were by far the richest country in all of Europe and in all of the world. And not just because they had some very rich people, but because wealth was also spread very widely for the time. So there was a broad middle class that was able to participate in this extraordinary culture.
Now, of course, you can't walk into the world of the past, but I think this is the next best thing. And what a wonderful object it is. It's a 17th century doll's house. It must have cost a fortune. It was certainly, I suspect, one of the more expensive Christmas presents given in the year 1675. What's fascinating about it as well is that it offers us, almost as a microcosm, the ideal home of the rich Dutch merchant class, the burgher. This is how he was supposed to live. Notice, these people are avid collectors. They're fascinated by painting. They've got a Raphael on their wall, an old master, and over the fireplace in the main room, behind the master of the house and the mistress, there's a beautiful Dutch still life painting. Painting everywhere. In this prosperous, emerging Dutch state, the church and the nobility had been usurped from their customary role as the biggest patrons of the arts. The Dutch merchant class filled the gap, creating a thriving middle-class art market. Painters were reliant from now on the private citizens' patronage, and they responded with an energy that more than matched the vigour of the merchants themselves. Art as a commodity, an object of trade and exchange, had well and truly arrived. Each new specifically Dutch form of painting produced its own new genius. The cheekily vibrant portraits of Frans Hals, the air-filled landscapes of Hobbema, the sun-drenched idylls of Cuyp, Vermeer's hymns to domesticity. And the most famous of them all, Rembrandt. So where did they get the cash to pay for this amazing art boom? Answer: expanding Dutch trade.
The Netherlands have always been on a crossroads of trade routes. So the trade between the Mediterranean and the north and England and the continent and the German hinterland all had to pass through this, the Low Countries.
Now, if you wanted to dominate world trade in the 17th century, there was really only one way to do it. You had to rule the waves, and Dutch maritime supremacy was the key to Dutch trading success. And unsurprisingly, Dutch art is full of images that celebrate the Dutch obsession with the sea. No one paints the details of ships, their rigging, their sails filled by the wind, their cannon belching out flame and smoke. No one paints that with more obsessive interest in detail than the Dutch artist. This is the Maritime Gallery of the Rijksmuseum. It's one of the most spectacular spaces. Look, they're putting the finishing touches to this wonderful Dutch man of war. And pride of place is occupied by this painting. And what it reminds us of is the fact that the Dutch naval expansion in the 17th century did not go unnoticed, least of all by the English. The Dutch fought 3 great naval wars with the English. And this picture commemorates the single most humiliating defeat suffered by His Majesty's Royal Navy in all of history. It's a depiction of the Medway Raid, as it was called. Charles II of England had negotiated a truce with the Dutch, but he'd done so in bad faith. They sniffed it out, and they sailed their ships into the Thames estuary, catching the British Navy by surprise. They set fire to the fleet. These are the heroic Dutch ships coming home, and they towed away the flagship of the Royal Navy. The man responsible, he's here. Great hero of Dutch history, Michiel de Ruyter. What a man. I mean, you don't want to mess with him, do you? And the story continues as you move through the gallery, because up here, what have we got? Amazing. The only surviving remnant of a 17th century battleship. And what is it? It's the prow of that flagship, towed away by Michiel de Ruyter. And here it is, erected in the stadium, so to speak, of Dutch history as a permanent scoreboard. Holland 1, England 0. 19th century, the stadtholder, the ruler of Holland, was the young William III. And this picture commemorates his marriage to his English cousin, Mary Stuart, daughter of James II. He was 14, she was 9, and they've just got married. Now, you might think this was a happy ever after story, but in fact, one of the largest family spats in European royal history was about to erupt. William was a Protestant, and when his English father-in-law James produced a new son and resolved to raise him as a Catholic, James's opponents in England appealed to William to expel the unreforming king. William set sail with a huge invasion force and seized the English crown, wife by his side. Here they are, the China versions of William and Mary. Now, William wasn't just a military man and a power broker. He was somebody who revelled in the trappings of wealth and grandeur, everything that came with his new role, both as Dutch stateholder and English king. He and his wife Mary were avaricious collectors of china, fine arts, painting, silver, furniture. And this section of the Rijksmuseum, to me, is almost like a cornucopia overflowing with examples of their rather flowery taste. Now, this is William and Mary's bed. Rather lumpy looking, but how magnificent is that? It's an embroiderer's dream, or should that be embroiderer's nightmare? Just imagine how many hours went into the creation of this palace for sleeping. It's an interesting reminder that although we think of William as this great figurehead of Protestant culture, he was anything but a Puritan. Now, Dutch trade with the Far East is a vital part of the national story. Think of modern Holland's most famous export. Well, it was originally brought here from the Far East, the tulip. Now, the collections of the Rijksmuseum are full of the remains, the relics, the residue of this fruitful interchange between East and West. So much so that they've decided in the newly revamped version of the museum to dedicate an entire new space to their Asian collections, the Asian Pavilion. The great Dutch trading adventure during the Golden Age took them all over the world, but it was their routes to the Far East that proved most profitable. Such was their Eastern dominance, that for 2.5 centuries they were the only Europeans, the only outsiders, who traded with Japan. And I think if you want to enjoy the fruits of the truly extraordinary relationship between the Dutch and the Japanese, this is the best place to come. This, for me, is one of the great works of decorative art in the world. It's a samurai military commander helmet created in Japan around the late 16th century. When is battle declared? Battle is declared, it commences at dawn. As the sun rises, here he is. He has to be visible. His troops number in thousands. There he is at the center of his army with the sun shining on this extraordinary helmet, turning him into a kind of beacon. What a thing. I don't reckon you want to be on the other side from him, but moving from war, power to luxury and conjugal bliss, isn't this a wonderful thing? It's the image of a crane, symbol of faithfulness, because the crane only has one partner. It's thought that this beautiful lacquer creation, which is also a box, was used to serve food at wedding celebrations. Look at the decoration, look at the skill, the subtlety. I mean, this is just such a wonderful collection of objects. I could pick anything, but this is, I love this. So Menno, how long have you been curator here?
16 years actually.
So basically 2/3 of your professional career, the museum has been closed.
That's right, it's a funny chunk out of my career, but I think it's worth it.
I think a lot of people, well, particularly from Britain perhaps, may be slightly surprised to find such a wonderful Asian collection in the Rijksmuseum.
Isn't that nice? There is a very long-standing relation with Asia. The Dutch have been trading with Asia for 4 centuries, over 4 centuries. So in a way, it's part of Dutch culture to be outward-looking and exploring. So in a way, it's very appropriate to have this wide horizon in our National Museum in Amsterdam. It gives a special context. It's like a counterbalance. It balances out. It broadens the horizon of this otherwise quite narrow story of Dutch history and culture.
So when you look at those wonderful Dutch seascapes, those boats, and you think, well, where are they going?
Exactly.
And then you come here and you, this is where they were going.
This is the world they found.
These guys are fantastic. What are we looking at here?
We're looking at 2 14th century temple guardians. The wonderful thing about these pieces is that they're very clear in their message. These guys are here to keep evil out of the temple. It's pretty obvious.
They're fantastic. I love it. I mean, look at their muscles. They've been in the gym, these guys. I tell you what they remind me of, which I think is really interesting, that there's this sort of crossover between English medieval culture and Japanese medieval culture, because what did we put on our churches, or the Dutch as well, you know, gargoyles to ward off evil spirits.
Yes.
And these guys are really sort of Japanese gargoyles, aren't they?
Imagine being in the 14th century. There's not a lot of visual input.
So yeah, you're coming down maybe from your farm or your mountain, and you see this.
That must have been pretty stunning.
Are they recently acquired?
Yes, 2007. And it's a real addition to our collection of sculpture.
There's just one favour that I wanted to ask you before we leave, is that I know it might be a bit of an ask, but you know that helmet?
Yes.
The fantastic samurai helmet? Would it be possible before the museum opens?
You want to wear it?
You got it. Please.
Go on then.
Oh, what a guy. Now, one of the great challenges for any national museum is to grow and expand with the passing of time. And when the Rijksmuseum closed 10 years ago, there was a huge gap in the way in which it told the story of the Dutch nation. It didn't have any objects at all dating from after the end of the 19th century. In other words, the whole of the 20th century was a void. This is the new 20th century wing of the Rijksmuseum, a collection bravely started from scratch. New additions include their very first abstract works. They also, I think rightly, celebrate design and architecture. The modern Dutch are a nation of makers.
By completely reinventing the presentation of the collection, you also started to see where we have certain weaknesses, or what our strengths are in the collection, and what you would want to show the public when you reopen. So we started a collection of 20th century art as well.
That's setting the bar pretty high, because I imagine it's not that easy to get hold of a good Mondrian now.
Exactly. Well, it's a long-term project. We now have some fantastic loans, and maybe one day we will be able to buy one. But we don't...
Maybe the right person will leave you one.
Exactly, that's what we always hope. But we want it to be of the level of the 17th century, 18th century, 19th century collection, where again, placing the art in a historical context is essential.
I admire the museums facing up to the bleaker parts of modern Dutch history, especially the Nazi occupation. Now, every object in this museum tells a story, but this object tells a particularly dark one. This chess set was presented by Himmler to the leader of the Dutch National Socialist movement in 1940. And what it represents is the territorial ambitions the colonialist greed of the Nazi movement. The rooks are rocket launchers. Instead of a king and a queen, you've got bombs. Talk about war games. It's enough to send a shiver down your spine. I think the Rijksmuseum is more than a collection of objects. It's also a shrine to collective memory, and that's what this display case is all about. It houses the jacket worn by a German Jewish lady who'd emigrated to Holland to try and find safety and had in fact been confined within one of Hitler's death camps. She survived. And this jacket, she kept it with her till the end of her life. She meticulously repaired it, as if somehow she needed an object to remind her of the pain that she'd gone through and survived. And what's extraordinary about the story is that the jacket was gifted to the museum by the lady's daughter. But there's a twist to the story, which is that the mother had never told the daughter that she'd been in the camp. It was a complete surprise. Coming to Amsterdam this week, I don't think I've ever felt more intense civic, national excitement about the reopening of a museum.
I'm slightly nervous about it because the entire organisation, all the people working here have put their heart in making the most beautiful thing, and we hope, of course, that when the public enters in millions, they will all kind of think the same. But that you only know